Hey everyone, Kyle Walker here. If you love cars, fixing things, or just want to understand your vehicle better, you're in the right place. I share hands-on tips, smart driving advice, and straight-up car talk without the fluff. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick around till the end. You don't want to miss what's coming up. Let's get into it.
To improve the internal combustion engine did not stop for a minute, regardless of world wars and global economic crises. They continue even now, although the number of skeptics who claim that nothing revolutionary can be created in this area is constantly growing. On the one hand, they are indeed right, but only partially. Evolutionary improvement is in full swing. A vivid example of this is the appearance of a new line of power units under the acronym TSI, characterized by increased power width, reduced fuel consumption, and both of these characteristics are considered antagonistic. Their history begins relatively recently, in 2004, when Audi specialists equipped a relatively low-power 2-liter atmospheric engine, known by the abbreviation FSI, with a turbocharger. The result was the TFSI motor, short for turbocharged fuel stratified injection, translated into Russian as turbocharging with bilayer fuel injection. 2 years later, Volkswagen developed its own version of the turbocharged 2-liter atmospheric, calling it simply TSI, without the letter F. Currently, power units with such markings are produced by VAG concern for a large family of models, representing the brands Volkswagen, Audi, Skoda, and others. However, in essence, both types of engines are practically indistinguishable. What are TSI engines? Neither in Russia nor in Europe, the average common man is unlikely to be able to explain what it is, TSI engine, even at the conceptual level. Meanwhile, many European cars made in Germany, Spain, and the Czech Republic are supplied with such engines. Interesting fact, according to surveys, a significant proportion of car owners confuse the term TSI with TDI, considering the former to be a type of diesel engine. In fact, TSI is a purely gasoline engine, gasoline analogs of which do not exist in nature. Today, the most famous representative of this family can be called a 1.4-liter unit, which, despite the small volume, has good dynamics with excellent economy. It is not by chance that it has a lot of prestigious awards in these nominations. Let's consider the features of the design of these engines. The first generation of such injector power units operating on gasoline was equipped with 2 turbines, the work of which was supported by a mechanical compressor paired with a system of layer-by-layer gasoline injection. Later, as the design was improved, it was decided to leave only 1 turbine, which did not change the designation of the unit, but the abbreviation was deciphered a little differently. The word twin charger was replaced by turbo, which reflected the refusal of the double turbine. So today the abbreviation of TSI engine is deciphered a little differently. Of course, any turbocharged engine is much more complex than an atmospheric engine. In this case, the designers managed to achieve an increase in engine power while improving economy, making cars equipped with small volume motors very dynamic. True, the cost of such power units is also much higher than the classic atmospheric analogs. But this is, as they say, the cost of technical progress. It is worth noting that the motors of the first generations were not characterized by high reliability, but as the defects were eliminated. This indicator was able to bring to canonical values. Currently, the line of TSI power units is considered one of the most numerous, and the most popular, as we have already noted, was the 1.4-liter version, which also has a lot of modifications. It managed to break the prejudice that motors of such volume are in little demand today due to insufficient power, which does not allow to increase the functionality of the car. Indeed, the power of the 1.4 TSI engine was increased to 122 horsepower, but this is not the limit, with the correct reflashing. And on modified engines this figure is already 140 horses, and the last generation is able to develop at the same volume as much as 170 horsepower. Agree, simply fantastic power for such a meager volume. How did VAG engineers achieve such impressive results? The thing is that initially, it was the 1.4-liter engine that was taken as a basis for the development of all other lines of motors, including liter and 3.0-liter. For this reason, German specialists tested all new products on it, including a new turbine made to a special specification. As a result, they managed to achieve a power gain of 20 horsepower, and as the design and software were improved, this figure could be increased even more. The 170 horsepower level was achieved with the introduction of another innovation, the installation of two turbochargers as part of a separate supercharger and separate turbocharger. Of course, the firmware, under the control of which the power unit operates, had to be significantly modified. What does the TSI engine mean from the point of view of the possibility of its tuning? The designers themselves do not exclude that thanks to the improvement of the firmware it is possible to achieve even greater power gain, but at the expense of reducing the engine life. Summarizing the above, we note that all motors of this range are designed and operate on the same principle. And only the youngest representative of the family, the leader unit, stands out a little against the general background because it was originally designed exclusively with turbocharging. There are no atmospheric analogs. Currently, this motor is installed on urban small cars, for example, on the Up model from Volkswagen, as well as on hybrid modifications. Design features of the engine. Motors of the TSI family are an exemplary example of the evolutionary path of internal combustion engine development. Except for the turbocharger, otherwise it is a classic gasoline unit, which is inherent in the BC and the piston group and other nodes. The peculiarity of its design was the inclusion of a pair of superchargers, which forced the designers to make changes in the cooling system and in the block responsible for gasoline injection. Since the total weight of the power unit increased as a result of such changes, it was decided to lighten it by replacing the cast iron BC with an aluminum one. Read also, gear ratio of the gearbox. What it means and how to calculate it. Let's consider the main components characteristic of TSI engines. The turbocharger and the mechanical compressor are located on opposite sides of the BC. In this case, the source of energy for the compressor is exhaust gases, which drive the turbine wheel, and only then, through specially designed actuators, the pressure is formed, forcing air into the combustion chambers. Note that turbocharged engines of the old type are considered more efficient than their atmospheric counterparts, but in the TSI family of power units this indicator is even higher. It should be noted that the operation of a classic turbocharged engine is inefficient at low crankshaft speeds, including idle speed. This disadvantage is known as the turbo pit syndrome, when the motor is able to operate in the rated power mode only when it reaches about 3,000 RPM. For this reason, the driver has to constantly press the accelerator pedal while the powertrain is warming up to keep the engine from running lean. TSI motors are noticeably more advanced in this respect. This is achieved by the inclusion of a mechanical supercharger in the design, which works normally at lower revolutions, unlike the classic turbine, which starts up at 2,500 to 3,000 revolutions. The presence of a pair of superchargers significantly improves engine performance, as it allows air to be pumped into the cylinders in all modes. It is the mechanical compressor that is responsible for the stable operation of the powertrain at low speeds, so the notorious syndrome does not occur here if all engine components are working properly. The synergy of the turbine compressor pair is really impressive, and this is the innovation that allowed the designers to work thoroughly on increasing the power of the unit with low fuel consumption. The cooling system has also been significantly improved. In particular, it was integrated liquid cooler, which functions to reduce to the working temperature inside the compressor and supercharger. In classic supercharged engines, the turbine is cooled solely by the natural inflow of rushing air. Another improvement is the addition of special pipes, the route of which passes through the intercooler. This arrangement of air ducts has made it possible to inject air into the cylinders under higher pressure. As a result of layer-by-layer, more uniform filling of the combustion chamber with air-fuel mixture and allowed to have a significant impact on the dynamics of the power unit. Of course, in the upward direction. In particular, when reaching about 1,000 to 1,500 RPM, the torque reaches values in the region of 200 to 210 N/meter. The injection system has also changed significantly. It can be said that TSI engines are unique in this respect, as gasoline is fed into the CC, bypassing the fuel ramp. Layer air supply guarantees the most uniform formation of the fuel mixture, which affects the efficiency of its combustion. As a result of all these innovations, it was possible to increase the power of the power unit at the same time optimizing gasoline consumption. Thanks to the use of this scheme, it is possible to save about half a liter of fuel for every 100 kilometers. Replacement of cast iron with aluminum in the manufacture of the cylinder block allowed to significantly reduce the weight of the motor. To be exact, the BC weighs 14 kilograms less, which is an excellent indicator for a modern power unit. However, the block design in combination with the cylinder head has been modified. The changes affected both camshafts and head cover. Summarizing the above, it can be stated that German engineers managed to achieve a significant increase in the performance of the power unit, regardless of its volume. Thus, motors with a volume of 1.5 liters, which had already begun to write down in the category of unpromising, have found a second life. Thus, the usual atmospheric from the same auto concern with a volume of 1.2 liters develops a power of 90 horses, and its analog, with a pair of turbine compressor, is capable of producing about 105 horsepower. A significant modernization of the engine lineup occurred in 2013, when the components previously considered insufficiently reliable were improved. Thus, previously on the 1.2/1.4-liter engines, weak link was the timing chain, which had to be replaced every 50 to 75,000 kilometers, otherwise it simply broke due to the impact of increased loads. The designers decided to replace the chain with a classic timing belt, the resource of which was at least twice as long. It should not be forgotten that a belt is much easier to maintain and replace than a chain. But in more productive units with a volume of 1.8/2.0 liters, the chain was decided to leave, making it stronger and strengthening the timing unit itself. Advantages and disadvantages of the TSI engine. If we discuss the pros and cons of TSI engines in outline, then we can emphasize the following advantages: increased performance, environmental friendliness, absence of turbo jam, regardless of the mode of operation of the engine, good fuel economy. Let's take a closer look at all these factors. The TSI power unit combines the advantages of turbocharging and layer-by-layer formation of fuel assemblies. It is these design features that allowed to increase the power characteristics at the expense of improving torque parameters. In other words, the power of the engine with a smaller volume becomes comparable to the indicators of atmospheric motors with a much larger volume of the combustion chamber. Thus, 1.2-liter TSI power unit, equipped with one turbine, is capable of producing 105 horsepower. The 1.6-liter engine is capable of such power in atmospheric cars. But that's not all. German engineers managed to achieve that the maximum torque fell into the low-frequency range, which significantly improved the acceleration dynamics. Read also, the principle of nitrous oxide and the nuances of application on cars. Another characteristic feature of TSI motors is considered to be the optimal ratio of economy to power, and it is these parameters are the main antagonists on the way to improving the internal combustion engine. The increase in power, as a rule, leads to an increase in fuel consumption, and vice versa. The addition of a mechanical compressor to the turbine allowed the engine to gain unprecedented elasticity, which is uncharacteristic of classic turbocharged power units. TSI engines are leading the way in terms of carbon dioxide emissions, delivering about half the CO2 concentration of their atmospheric counterparts. Direct injection has solved the problem of mixture formation, making the fuel mixture as efficient as possible, and the mixture supply to the cylinders has also improved. Motors of the last generation have a decent resource, which shows that engineers from VAG managed to solve the problem of reliability of TSI engines. Finally, we should not discount such positive aspects as a lower cost of customs clearance of vehicles equipped with power units of this line, as well as extensive opportunities for power tuning. Forcing of such motors is carried out quite simply, often by replacing the firmware with a more perfect one. If the operating conditions of such units are acceptable, if you use only good quality fueling fluids and carefully observe all the regulatory terms for their replacement, the resource of engines can be about 300,000 kilometers and more. Only the turbine is considered to be a unit that requires a lot of attention from the car owner. It is recommended to cool it after each trip, as well as warm up this engine element before leaving the garage. The mechanical compressor is quite reliable and does not require special care. There are disadvantages of TSI motors. They are sensitive to the quality of consumables, and it is much more difficult to care for them than for atmospheric brethren. What does this mean? The use of low-grade gasoline and oil reduces the life of the TSI engine several times. If you regularly pour fuel into the tank, the octane number of which does not correspond to the declared, and the level of pollution exceeds the permissible norms, the service life will not exceed 100 to 130,000 kilometers, which for a modern power unit is clearly not enough. In addition, repair of such an engine is too costly. On previous generations of engines, the turbine service life rarely exceeds 100,000 kilometers. Another headache for units manufactured before 2013 is the timing chain drive. Due to increased loads, it stretches too quickly, resulting in wear of links and slippage of the chain through the teeth of the sprockets. Such a malfunction threatens the failure of pistons and valves, which forces owners to inspect this unit often enough for the presence of these shortcomings. Weak turned out to be an voltage regulator, the breakdown of which is fraught with similar severe consequences. If you leave the car on fairly steep hills with a large gradient only in gear, without using the parking brake, there is a possibility of shifting the car, which will slip the chain. Cars coming off the assembly line after 2013 are devoid of these shortcomings. We mean versions of 1.2/1.4 liter engines of EA211 series. In them, the chain, as previously mentioned, has been replaced by a belt. Finally, an important disadvantage of TSI power units should be considered increased consumption of According to the factory specifications, depending on the model, this parameter is 0.5 to 1.0 L/100 km. Due to increased oil consumption, plugs suffer, which have to be changed frequently. TSI engines in Russia. Cars equipped with motors of this series have been produced for quite a long time. Of course, a considerable number of them have settled in our country, and over the years, their owners have traveled a considerable number of kilometers to form their own opinion about the level of reliability and ease of maintenance of these engines. If we analyze their statements on specialized forums, the following picture emerges. TSI power units have shown themselves very well in urban conditions, when without the possibility of intensive acceleration, you will constantly feel considerable discomfort. However, driving on country roads proved to be quite acceptable, especially when overcoming long climbs and overtaking, but traveling relatively short distances for such engines is undesirable, especially in winter, as turbocharged engines require long warm-up time, so that with frequent stops you have to waste a lot of time. The majority of car owners state that it is undesirable to purchase cars with such power units for the northern regions of the country for the reasons described above. They are equally unanimous about the need to use only quality consumables, oil, filters, fuel. It is desirable to replace in our conditions every 50 to 700 kilometers. At appearance of extraneous noises in the area of the engine, it is necessary to address in car service as soon as possible. Untimely detection of malfunctions threatens significant financial expenses. The most negative outcome is the need for complete engine replacement. If you plan to buy a used car with a TSI engine, do not be lazy to study the service history of the car, paying close attention to the regularity of oil changes. If it was changed with an extended interval, more than 40,000 kilometers, it is better to refuse such a purchase. In general, impressions from this line of motors can be characterized as positive, but under the condition of careful operation and timely maintenance. However, these recommendations are applicable to absolutely all cars. In conclusion, TSI engines represent a remarkable blend of power and efficiency, making them a standout choice for modern drivers. With their innovative turbocharging and direct fuel injection technologies, these engines deliver impressive performance while maintaining excellent fuel economy. Whether you're looking for a spirited driving experience or a more economical option for daily commutes, TSI engines offer a versatile solution that meets a wide range of needs. As automotive technology continues to evolve, TSI engines are likely to remain at the forefront, proving that you don't have to sacrifice power for efficiency. Thank you for watching. and we hope this exploration of TSI engines has provided valuable insights into their benefits.